We are in the worst month in recent UFC history, and I wanted to talk about the Sphere. That is the only thing that we have to really look forward to as UFC fans, or I should say the only new and interesting thing that we have to look forward to until, our regular decent pay-per-views, which again are great, but this is something different. This is something new, and I really don't want the UFC to fumble it. All right, we're in a dry period right now. We have two irrelevant back-to-back WMMA main events, the second of which is going to be in the Apex. We shouldn't be in the Apex anymore. And the next card that we actually care about, the UK fans are getting screwed over, and it's being headlined by Bilal Muhammad and Leon Edwards. And that fight could be promoted in an interesting way, but I don't think the UFC is going to. They're not going to do the face-to-face sit-down like they do in boxing. So we're not going to see any good trash talk in the build-up for that. So it's going to be a regular, stale build-up. And that's why I want to talk about the Sphere, because the Sphere is different, it's new, and it gives the fans something to look forward to. We don't know what to expect. And I also think it's important that if the UFC is hyping it up so much, that we stack the card. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to do a card builder for the Sphere. I'm going to do a realistic card for the Sphere. I don't think it needs to be as stacked as UFC 300. But I also don't want to wait until UFC 400 to see another unbelievable card. Dana White is talking about the Sphere like it's a one-and-done thing. It's only going to be done once. It'll never be recreated. And he's pulling out people that have worked on movies or TV shows and won Oscars and Emmys and all this BS. And he's going to have 4 trucks outside. And Dana White's putting together a super team to pull this off. And he's hyping it up. He got Saudi Arabia on board because it's going to be so expensive to pull off. You got to pull out all the stops, meaning you got to have big fights. All right, we can't have a once-in-a-lifetime card at the Sphere, the best production we're ever going to see, with Alexa Grasso in the main event. We just can't have that. And I'm getting worried because, you've got guys like O'Malley, you've got guys like Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway that are being talked about as potential headliners for this card, but the fights haven't been booked yet. What is the holdup? Okay, O'Malley's saying on his podcast that it's either September or December, but I'm staying ready. That shouldn't even be a statement that he should be uttering right now. O'Malley should be locked in for the Sphere. He should instead be saying, I'm just waiting for the UFC to announce it. I know I'm fighting in September. And I don't want there to be a competition over who's going to headline it. O'Malley and Merab is going to be a co-headline or a headline. I don't care. I need O'Malley on that card, and I want Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria on it as well. Okay, there should be no question about those fights. All right, we know who's going to be fighting in October. It's going to be one of the brothers. We know who's going to be fighting in November. It's going to be Jones and Stipe, a disgraceful matchup that none of us are interested in, but we know what it's going to be. I don't want to wait until December to see O'Malley. O'Malley's always doing that thing where he's like, he'll fight in August, he'll knock out Aljo, and he'll be like, I want to stay active, I want to fight in December. And then once October hits, O'Malley's saying, yeah, it's either December or March. And then he fights in March. All right, after his last fight against Cheeto, it was, I want to fight at the Sphere. Now that we're getting close, he's saying, yeah, it's going to be the Sphere or December. Let's get O'Malley on the Sphere. That should be locked in, and let's do Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria as a main event. Those are massive fights. There are also some other fights on the card, and I'm going to show you guys the fights that are on there right now, but I'm going to make a really excellent card. And again, I want to stress and emphasize the importance for building such a big card. This is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime production that the UFC is going to put on. This is going to be an event, one of those events that has potential to really grow the sport and add an extra couple 100,000 fans, maybe even more. And I think that it would be such a shame for them to just have a regular-ass pay-per-view or fight night. We can't do that, okay? No squandering this. It made such a difference to see UFC 300 where every single fight was unbelievable. Not every single one, but 90% of them were amazing. You were looking forward to the next prelim bout, okay? And it grew the sport, all right? It set records. It went viral all over social media. We need something like that. I don't want to wait until, as I said, UFC 400 to see one of these epic cards. It really makes a big difference. And the thing is, when it comes to the promotion, the content creators and the fans are going to be talking about it for months in the buildup. If it's just Alexa Grasso in the main event, you're not going to hear a fucking peep. It's going to be in the background of other sports that are going on in September. No one's really going to be talking about it. I don't want it to just be an under-the-radar card. I want it to be fucking massive. I want the hardcore fans blowing off the roof talking about this card, and we need that because it's so much fun when we have something like that to look forward to. So I don't want a regular pay-per-view. I don't want a regular decent fight night. It needs to be special. So I'm going to show you guys the fights that are on it right now, and then I'm going to show you the fights that need to be booked for this card. Let's get into it. So right now we're looking at the fights that have been booked so far for UFC 306 at the Sphere. And listen, one of these is incredible, and that is Michel Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez. That is an amazing fight. That could be on any pay-per-view, and I would be happy about it. I like both of those fighters. They both have tons of hype from the hardcore fans. They're sort of like in their own right, the boogeymen of that division right now. Two incredible, entertaining opposites. Michel Pereira, dynamic striker, finishes people on the feet. Anthony Hernandez, like a heavy pressure grappler that submits people and TKOs them on the ground. But I want this card to be so good that that's on the prelims. That should be like the headliner of the prelims. Irene Aldana, Norma Dumont, it is what it is, okay? You got to have one of those on there. I understand. Yasmin Juragul versus Ketlin Souza. This is where I'm getting worried. This is a lot of fights that we're looking at. This is 5 fights. There's only room for like 8 more. And the trend is not looking too good because after Yasmin Juragul, I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing her name correctly, versus Ketlin Souza, which just is totally irrelevant. It doesn't need to be on this card. We've got Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Ode Osborne. And I know there are going to be some super hardcore fans. They're going to be saying something along the lines of, what do you mean, man? Ode Osborne is a fucking legend, man. Ode Osborne. Come on, let's cut the bullshit, all right? Ronaldo Rodriguez, listen, dude. I understand that Ronaldo Rodriguez is a legend, but come on. Like, you know, we don't need him. We don't need another one of those, is all I'm saying. Edgar Chairez, Kevin Borjas, that's actually a decent fight. But these are going to be the worst fights. Okay, Michel Pereira, Anthony Hernandez is a sick fight. The other 4, let's not get any worse. Our standards have to be, up there. They need to go up there, dude. All right, we can't be dropping the ball that low for the rest of the card. You get my point. I don't want to see another one of Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Ode Osborne. I don't want to see another Yasmin Juragul versus Ketlin Souza. Okay? I want things that are along the lines of Michel Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez. And so I'm going to show you my card, all right? Let's keep in mind that we are doing UFC Noche. So this is a Mexican-themed card, all right? So one guy that you need to have on there, and he's not a big name, so I understand maybe it's not going to be as good as Anthony Hernandez versus Michel Pereira, but I want to see Manuel Torres on this card. Manuel Torres, 4-0 in the UFC, or 3-0 with 3 finishes. Every single one of his fights have been fast. They've been finished in brutal fashion. This guy is must-see TV. He's at 155 pounds. He's a kill-or-be-killed fighter. Perfect representative of the classic Mexican style. So who do I want to see this guy fight? Well, an Ismael Bonfim. Let's do that. Let's do another Brazil versus Mexico matchup. Let's do Ismael Bonfim versus Manuel Torres. Ismael Bonfim, one of the Bonfim brothers, has a lot of hype, has an entertaining style, well-rounded, like Manuel Torres. It's going to be a war. Both guys have lots of power. Both guys are looking to finish a fight. They're in similar positions in their career. Let's put that fight on the prelims. Let's do Ismael Bonfim versus Manuel Torres. Now, I mentioned Daniel Zellweger, a really excellent striker at 155 pounds. 4-1 in the UFC. He's only lost to Trey Ogden, which was a weird loss, but he looked incredible in his last fight against Francisco Prado. And I want to see Daniel Zellweger fight Jim Miller. Okay, you can have old crafty Jim Miller marketing his cookbook. I'll be helping Jim Miller out that week. Let's do Jim Miller, old crafty vet, versus Daniel Zellweger. You know, it's not like you're feeding Jim Miller to the wolves and just treating him as a stepping stone, even though that's kind of the desired outcome here. But Jim Miller can still defend himself. He's not just totally hopeless in the cage. He knows how to fight. And it is a drop down in competition from Bobby Green. Jim Miller's one of those old crafty vets with a hunchback, and he's got a frog-like physique. But the man can leap into a good shot. The man can throw a punch, and the man can kick, and the man can submit you. So let's do old crafty vet Jim Miller versus Daniel Zellweger, who, again, is a really exciting prospect in the 155-pound weight class. So those are going to be our first two fights on the regular prelims. And before Michel Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez, which, as I said, should headline the prelims, that's the fight before the pay-per-view starts, a guy that took no damage in his last fight that has a lot of hype, the real O'Malley, that's right, Peyton Talbot, took no damage, had like a 14-second fight, put him on the card against Adrian Yanez. That's the fight. That's the one that people want. He called out Adrian Yanez. Yanez took no damage in his last fight, so that's the fight that I want to see. There's going to be a finish. Both guys are going to strike with each other. So we have two really hyped up fights, two wars underneath them. Every single one of these is going to be a fun fight. Now let's move on to the main card, which I am going to make 6 fights. We're going to do a 6-fight main card. This one, again, we're going to pull out all the stops. This is going to be a card worth your money. The first fight, I'm thinking Yair Rodriguez, one of the most entertaining fighters on earth if he's in a striking battle. One of the best strikers on earth. Okay? So right off the bat, Yair Rodriguez is one of the bigger names from Mexico. And you want to have him on this card to showcase his best skill set. So listen, what's the point of putting Yair Rodriguez on here if you're going to give him someone like Bryce Mitchell? Because if he loses, it's just going to be a stinky fight on the ground where Bryce Mitchell gets a submission. The showcase right now is Yair Rodriguez, Mexican striker who looks like he's in a fucking movie. He's one of those few guys that can pull off techniques that you only really see in movies, but he's doing it in a real fight. I want Yair to fight someone that's going to stand with him. I don't want to just put him up there against Aljamain Sterling or Bryce Mitchell. And I know that some people are going to be saying, what do you mean, man? What do you really care who's going to win? Don't be biased, dude. Don't be biased. No, we want to make sick matchups. We want to have awesome stylistic matchups. And yes, guess what? The best stylistic matchups sometimes are strikers versus strikers. Okay? It doesn't always have to be we have to throw Yair to the wolves. Come on, dude. You know, why you're protecting him? Dude, enough of the bullshit, son. Enough of the BS. All right, he just fought someone that could take him down like Brian Ortega, and he lost. We also have to be realistic. There aren't many strikers around Yair Rodriguez's ranking spot. There's not many of them. So the guy that makes sense, so that you don't have to go outside of the rankings to find someone, because, again, we need to be realistic. Yair's not going to do that. He's not going to want to fight down that much, is Lerone Murphy. That is the fight to make. Lerone Murphy just beat Edson Barboza, one of the best strikers in the 145-pound division, okay? And to our surprise, he made it a really entertaining fight, and he won it on the feet. I was saying going into that, Lerone's going to grapple. He's got okay grappling. Actually, he didn't ragdoll Edson Barboza, which is a good sign if you want a striking battle with Yair, because if you can't ragdoll Edson, if you can't totally outgrapple him with ease, then the odds of you like just running through Yair Rodriguez on the ground, they're not so high. So we know we're going to get a bit of a striking battle. But Lerone Murphy impressed us by moving forward like a guerrero and getting in the face of Edson Barboza, walking him down and beating him up, which means that he's a solid striker. I know not many people are going to know him, and they're going to say, Lerone Murphy, why is he on the card? Because he just beat Edson Barboza, and he had an entertaining fight with him. This makes sense. Yair versus Lerone. Maybe Lerone takes him down. It is what it is, but at least this is the guy that there's a chance we're going to get a striking battle out of it. Other than that, there's no other fight that makes sense for Yair Rodriguez unless you want to see him get crushed by a grappler. And UFC Noche can sometimes just be about 6 stylistic matchups. So let's just do this as a first fight to kick off the card. It has potential to be a war. On to the next one. Give me Brandon Moreno. It would be a shame to have UFC Noche go down at the Sphere, the most hyped up card that we've had since UFC 300, without Brandon Moreno. It makes sense. He's a big name in Mexico. He may not be a huge star. He's not pulling in hundreds of thousands of views on an interview, but Brandon Moreno on fight week, at press conferences, at weigh-ins, gets a lot of support from the crowd. So we need to have Brandon Moreno. It's hard to get Brandon Moreno a striking battle right now because all the strikers have fights coming up. Usyk, Kai Kara France, Manel Kape, and of course we need to be realistic, so we need to look to get him a fight with someone that's around his ranking spot. You can't give Brandon Moreno the number 14 ranked guy just because he's going to stand with him, because Moreno ain't going to take that fight. So it's either Amir Albazi, or it's Tatsuro Taira. And Amir Albazi is boring, and there's no hype on that whatsoever. So Tatsuro Taira it is. Let's do that. Tatsuro Taira is starting to get a lot of hype from the hardcore fans. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's coming off of a win over Alex Perez, who he destroyed in the second round. It was, a bit of a lackluster fight night, but either way, he's really good. And guess what? He's not just going to run through Brandon Moreno on the ground. Moreno's a great grappler. The question is, if he can't beat Brandon Moreno on the ground, how's he going to do on the feet? Brandon Moreno's way to win is right there. If he can stuff the takedowns and he has good takedown defense, we could see him beat up Tatsuro Taira. Either way, it's a really high-level matchup, one of the highest-level fights you can make in the flyweight division. And, Moreno seems to be a little bit gun-shy these days since he's had so many wars. He didn't look so great. He didn't look so hungry in his last fight against Royval. I think that Tatsuro Taira would be a good opponent for him because Tatsuro Taira doesn't exactly spell war on the feet. All right, but it's okay because Brandon Moreno can make it entertaining on the ground too. He's got really good wrestling, really good grappling. Let's make that fight, okay? It's going to have a lot of hype. Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno. The other option is Amir Albazi. I just don't think anyone cares to see that fight. But you got to have Brandon Moreno on here. That's the one that makes sense. We don't want another fucking Alex Perez fight or whatever. He just got KO'd stiff. All right? Next up, MVP versus Wonderboy Thompson. Third fight on this card. You could switch the Moreno and Taira matchup with this one. It doesn't really matter which one is where. Maybe you want to have Brandon Moreno higher because it's UFC Noche, whatever, I understand it. But this is a fight that's realistic as well. I don't think MVP took that much damage. Remember that fight that he had against Gary was in June? I think it was maybe July 1st. So he's going to have all of July and all of August to recover. And let's be honest, Ian Gary may have won that fight with the grappling and may have landed a couple of pit-pat shots on the ground, but he did no damage on the feet. And unless MVP got seriously injured in a scramble and tore something or pulled something, I think he'll be ready to fight. MVP is one of those guys that, he's like one of those kickboxers, one of those strikers that can stay active. And Wonderboy's not been in the cage for quite some time, and he's got no excuse not to be ready for this. This is a striker's dream. Again, let's just make sick fights. Before we get to the big ones, let's just make sick fights. We don't need hey, why are you putting these guys up against strikers? We got to do MVP versus Gilbert Burns. Fuck off. Let's do fun matchups. Let's do striker versus striker. Okay? MVP versus Wonderboy Thompson is a fucking sick fight. And both of these guys are some of the best strikers in history. I mean, MVP looks untouchable right now, and Wonderboy Thompson has the resume to back that up, but we know how good he is. It's going to be a dream matchup. Wonderboy Thompson MVP. Maybe it has potential to be a bit of a slow fight. Fair enough. But I still think I want to see it. The other alternative to this is a Kamaru Usman fight. But you know what? I don't think Usman's going to fight anyone like Brendan Allen. His ego's too big to let him fight someone that's mediocre just to get a free win. He's probably going to reserve himself to someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov. But I wouldn't mind seeing Usman on here. I just thought, maybe that's a bit of a weird random fight card for Usman to fight on, even though it's just a fucking fight card and he's a big name. Why not? But I can't actually see the UFC booking Usman versus someone that's not a really big name that has a lot of hype. Okay, that they kind of want to beat Kamaru. So I'm not going to get my dream Kamaru Usman versus a middleweight journeyman fight just so that he can rack up a free win. And I kind of don't want to see him fight Shavkat Rakhmonov just because I think it's a lose-lose situation for him. So either way, this is the fight. Wonderboy Thompson versus MVP. That's the one. Next up, we have Alexa Grasso, Tough Cookie. Which Tough Cookie is she going to be fighting? Well, it's either Valentina Shevchenko. We get to see the trilogy, which I actually would think it would be a good fight. I think it'd be a good fight. Or we see her versus someone else. You know what? I don't really care. If Shevchenko's not ready, all right, throw someone else in there. I don't really care that much. But you got to have Valentina on here. I mean, you got to have Alexa on here. Alexa Grasso needs to be on UFC Noche. You got to have all the help you can get. You have to have all the big names from Mexico: Yair, Moreno, Alexa Grasso. So that's what you need. Okay, because there's no one from Mexico that has a big enough name right now that's going to be main eventing if it's a pay-per-view. And we already have 2 fights that are bigger than Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko. And what is better than 3 title fights? I mean, 3 title fights is sick. And 2 of them are not WMA ones. These are real 2 title fights headlining the card. But yeah, I just realized 3 title fights is fucking epic. Okay, especially after the Moreno versus Taida matchup, the Yair Rodriguez-Lerone Murphy matchup, and the MVP versus Wonderboy matchup. Now we have O'Malley versus Merab. It's necessary. Okay, O'Malley on his own, he's not the biggest draw. You got to have someone above him that's going to give him some help. And not only is it great that O'Malley and Topuria fight on the same card because they have a little bit of a beef, they have a little bit of a back and forth, but Topuria and Merab are friends. Okay, so Topuria and Merab are going to be teaming up on O'Malley. They're going to be supporting each other. And I think that would be really good for the promotion. I think it would be good to see O'Malley and Topuria interact on fight week as well. They help each other out. They help each other out because you're kind of building a big fight. Of course, Topuria and Max Holloway needs to be the main event. All right, because let's say O'Malley goes out there and knocks out Merab and Topuria beats Max Holloway. You have them both face off in the cage. Awesome. Okay, that's what you have. And that's going to create a viral moment. Even if that's not the next fight you're going to make, it's a spectacle, okay? It's a spectacle. Maybe you have these guys get into an argument at the press conference, and who knows, maybe they'll be smart enough to do a little bit of a stare down like O'Malley did with Cody Garbrandt back in the day. Okay, but Topuria and Max Holloway is the perfect fight to headline this card. Max Holloway, his stock is the highest it's ever been in his entire career after knocking out Justin Gaethje on an enormous card like UFC 300 for the BMF belt, buzzer beater. His name is the biggest it's ever been. Topuria is going to sell this fight. He's cocky, and also it helps that he speaks Spanish. So when he's trash talking in Spanish and he has some really cold lines, people are going to be able to, take notice, and his fan base is going to grow when, a lot of Mexican fans who may not be so aware of Ilia Topuria listen in and they like the trash talk because maybe you got some people that are just there to support the Mexican fighters or whatever, and now they're a fan of Ilia Topuria. Okay? And also Topuria, O'Malley on the same card. That's a future super fight that you could build. But in general, I think it's important that you have Topuria and Max on the same card as O'Malley because O'Malley is not necessarily a big enough star and a big enough personality on his own to sell a super card like this. Okay? Yes, O'Malley is always going to have a really entertaining fight style. And on the night of the fights, his performances are going to speak volumes. But you got to have, really big names. And you got to have a big fight. And an O'Malley-Merab fight doesn't really feel big. It's a bantamweight fight, right? But the bantamweight division never has that big fight feel like a Holloway coming off of a BMF, Justin Gaethje faceplant KO versus Ilia Topuria, who's cocky, who's a trash talker, who just knocked out Volkanovski. That's what you need. All of those fighters, all of those fights together, they complement each other. Okay, and I just remembered, Yair Rodriguez is on the same card. Yair Rodriguez and Ilia Topuria hate each other. Topuria was calling Yair a bum, and Yair said that when he sees Topuria in person, he's just going to straight up attack him and fight him. I mean, this is the perfect card, man. Yair Rodriguez, Ilia Topuria don't like each other. Topuria and O'Malley don't like each other. Merab and O'Malley is a pretty sick matchup, but it needs some help from a guy like Max Holloway, who's, the biggest he's ever been when it comes to his star status. MVP versus Wonderboy, a striker's dream matchup. Brandon Moreno, Alexa Grasso, 2 big names from Mexico. This card has potential to sell maybe 800,000 pay-per-views. This could even reach 1 million, maybe, if it's promoted the right way. If it's promoted the right way, it would. But this is a sick card, and I hope that the UFC makes this. We're probably going to get something worse. It is what it is. I mean, my expectations are not so high because I just have a feeling that if they're not set on O'Malley and Merab yet, if they haven't announced it yet, then there's something going on behind the scenes where they're just fumbling it. But yeah, I just thought I would fantasize about an epic UFC card during this dry period that we are in right now in July. Let me know what you guys think of these matchups. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.